nightmare, nightmare, nightmare. I can't believe that just happened. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another video. A little bit different style this time. I'm going to watch this thing with you guys and kind of talk about it as we watch it together and hopefully answer any questions you guys might have along the way. But enough of that. Let's get right into this thing. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Yeah, we're doing a little bit of a different style on this one. I figured I'd just watch this thing with you guys and add my thoughts along the way, watch it together, and hopefully answer any questions that you guys might have along the way. Maybe I can explain myself a little bit, hopefully not get too defensive. And as usual, we're starting off with just the planer because this wood was actually surfaced on one of the sides already. So it was really nice, and I wasn't too worried about how flat it was because they were super flat and looking really good. I did spend some time picking out the lumber. So, you know, your wood's always not going to be perfect coming from the lumber yard, even if it says it's surfaced on one side. So you still got to sift through it and pick the good ones, and I did that. So we were good here. This job is the biggest like table job that I've ever done. It wasn't the longest, but this thing is a beast. The specs were 8 foot long and 5 foot wide. So on paper, it's always like, okay, it doesn't sound too big. You know, I've done, 9 foot long by like 40 wide, but then 8 foot long by 60 wide, 5 feet wide. I really didn't like comprehend how big that was going to be in my shop until I started to actually build this thing. And so that's when my design took a big turn. Not the design so much, but like my process of how I actually made this thing. So a little bit of improvising along the way, and I'm excited to show you guys what I came up with. So if you're ever in a weird situation like this is just like one option, one way that you could do this, and it worked really well for me. So I might have shown this trick before in some of my past videos, but since I'm not using my joiner on these boards because they're just so, it's 8/4 white oak, it's super heavy. It's honestly, for me, easier to get a better joint with a track saw than it is with a joiner with stuff that's this big. So when you use the track saw on each side, each piece of wood that you're gonna join and put them together, you may not have a perfect looking joint. So the solution to that is cutting each one, and then after you cut each one, put them together and see what you're working with. Like I said, it's probably not going to be perfect. As you can see here, there's some gaps in the middle, but on the ends it's tight right there. So what you're going to want to do is just put your track saw, put the two pieces of wood together, put the track saw back on it, and you're basically just going to want to rip these two pieces of wood together. And it's basically the same thing as if, I don't know if you guys have ever seen people with a joiner. If you're gonna join something, you can kind of like flip them, mirror them together, tape them or super glue them together or clamp them together and run it through the joiner at the same time. So you're cutting both edges at the same time. And then when you flip them back over, it's pretty much a perfect joint. It's really accurate. And it's basically the same thing that I did here with the track saw. You can just put the two pieces of wood together, go slow, cut, and you're just trying to, like, with half that, you're trying to split that blade width on each piece of wood. So you're just cutting into the wood a little bit on each piece. And you go all the way through, and that way any imperfections just basically get transferred over to the other piece, and it makes a perfect looking join. So I probably could have forced those two pieces together, but you don't really want to do that because then it's not going to be the strongest join. So yeah, once I push these things together, it's like a perfect looking join. And then you have to use way less clamping pressure to get these two pieces together, which is exactly what you want. You want these things to come together with as little clamping pressure as possible, for more than one reason. It's going to be actually a stronger join, because these pieces of wood aren't going to, after the glue's dry, they're not going to be trying to like go back to their original state. You know, if you're clamping like a bow in, the tension in that wood eventually is going to want to come back out. Even though the glue's like really strong and strong enough to hold it, it could do something funky down the line. And then the other reason is when you're clamping wood really tight, if you have to force it together, you're going to end up with a cup or a bow in that joint. So the less clamping pressure, the better. You can keep it nice and flat. You don't need to like try to excessively get these things together. So here's, yeah, just the gluing process. And this is obviously super basic. You guys have seen me do this before. If you're new here though, by the way, welcome. This is Indwell. My name is Jared. I live in Hawaii and make custom furniture. So as you can see, it doesn't take much to get these things together. I just alternate my clamps, top, bottom, and then I check for level along the way, or flatness, not level. And just, it's pretty easy. Even with big pieces like this, you shouldn't need much clamping pressure, just enough to get some squeeze out. And that's what I have here. So my plan here, I only have I think that my planer's like 12.5 inches or something like that. So since this table is so big, my plan was it's a 60-inch wide table. So my plan was to glue pieces together, like 6-inch pieces that I could then throw back through the planer. So instead of just like gluing them all together and then spending forever sanding and flattening, I decided to glue a couple together, send them back through the planer, get them flat, and then glue those pieces back together. So you're gonna see me do that in a minute. And that's kind of like my new process that I've been doing for bigger builds, and it's been working really well for me. Obviously, I need to get a new and bigger planer. I've been saving up for one for a while, so that's gonna slim down my time a lot when I can get that thing in the shop. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to bring this table up to the site in 2 pieces. And I'm going to do a lot of the finish work up there. But this is actually going to be way easier in the long run for me. So if you want to see how I do that, stick around. That's coming up soon. Alrighty, so this is for everybody that doubts that track saw method that I showed earlier. I didn't come up with this method by any means, but there's definitely people that are going to doubt this. So check this out. So this beauty shot right here is after, obviously, I glued 2 pieces together, and I think I did throw them back through the planer just to, you know, take like the glue line off and everything. But you can see with that method of using the track saw and then cutting them together, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, I can't even, oh, I see it now. Yeah, it's kind of on the right side a little bit, but I mean, the join's like, that glue line's like invisible. So very high quality if you can do it right. If you don't have a track saw, I seriously couldn't recommend one enough. Especially the Festool one. It's the only one I've ever owned, but that thing is like money every time. So it's also money. It's pretty expensive, so keep that in mind. But you can see, so I have these 2 pieces that I sent back through the planer, but it's 4 total pieces of wood, right? And I'm just gonna repeat the exact same process again. I put them through the planer, they're the same thickness, they're nice and flat again, and then to join these 2 pieces together, I'm doing that same method, ripping them together. That should give me a really good join. Obviously, you're probably thinking of the hours that this is taking. Yeah, probably not the most efficient way, but with something this big, I was like, this is gonna be like the only way to get a really good looking tabletop for me in my shop. And what you're looking at right now is half of the tabletop. So That's like a 30-inch wide table right there, 8 foot by 30, and I had to make 2 of those and join those together. So still to come, I'm gonna show you guys how I did that. Used a technique I've never really done before. So, and I kind of thought of doing it along the way. And that's what woodworking is all about, finding creative solutions to problems that always happen. So yeah, again, just clamping this thing together, alternating my clamps. Comment down below, what do you guys think about this method? Have you seen this before? Are you gonna try it in your shop? Do you think it's dumb? Yeah, let me know. As you can see, I also got a haircut a couple days after this build. So I started the build, it was kind of hot in the shop, was over it, cut the hair. So that also happened. Just checking for flatness and all that good stuff. And here's a little shot of after it's glued up. And obviously I can't send that through the planer. So, but the good news is that thing was ridiculously flat because of that process I showed you guys. It seriously kept it really, really flat. Oh my goodness, I've done so much work in that back room since I've recorded this video. There's not a doorway there anymore. I'll have to show you guys that. So I'm kind of tripping on that right now. But yeah, just scraping off the glue. Getting ready to probably sand. Yep, after some sanding, this is how we're looking. And this thing's a beauty. Super, super excited about it. And I like to kind of get the tabletop out of the way first when I'm doing a big build like this, because I want to get those pieces glued up. I want to get them together. There's always a chance of that wood moving. So as soon as I get the tops glued up, I immediately move on to some C-channel work. And this is like, how do you describe it? Like something that, it's like an insurance policy, right? It's like, you don't really know if it's doing anything until you really need it type thing. Could I tell you like 100% for sure that these work? No, because I haven't like ran tests or anything, but I can tell you that it gives me peace of mind. And peace of mind when you're delivering a piece of furniture that it's not gonna warp and move, and the top's not gonna, turn into a taco shell or something, is great when you're delivering a piece of furniture. So I feel like every single time I've done these C-channels, I've done them differently as well. Since I have done this video, I've just made a template with a router out of some MDF and laid it in there and just cut it out with a router, and it turns out pretty clean. And as you can see here, I'm using that track saw again. This is basically a track saw video. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but just, hog out the material and lay these things down in there. And I use, inserts and stuff to thread them in. So as you can see, there's all my waste, it's all gone. And this thing should just lay right down in there. And so I'm doing 2 of these in each half of the table. So, there's 4 total of these, but these, really give me peace of mind, and I feel like they keep that thing super flat. Alrighty, so one of these tops, not this one behind me, the other half of this thing, I have to redo. Unfortunately, I'm gonna flip around and kind of show you guys what happened. Oh boy. Okay, so here's where my first issue came with this table. I totally blew it on the other tabletop. You can see there's like a thinner piece of wood in the middle there, more narrow, not thinner, just more narrow. And that was because it was what I had to use. That was like all the wood I had. And I didn't alternate the direction of the grain. So as you can see, the grain scoops up and it scoops up, and it scoops up again. So there's 3 in a row where the end grain is going up. And that basically made that middle of the table cup. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to alternate, so the end grain's down and then up and then down and then up. And that theoretically keeps the table flat. But I just didn't do that here. And I think it was like the next day when I came back in, the middle of that table had a pretty serious cup in it before I was able to get that C channel in. And that's like what I was saying. I don't know if the C channel really would have prevented that. So I just had to cut this thing back down the middle, and I'm basically gonna flip over that entire piece and re-glue it together, so that the grain is going the right direction. So, and that should help it. And it did. When I did that, I was able to get this thing back together nice and flat, but honestly, super annoying. You don't want to have to do that kind of stuff. But like I said, it's woodworking. That stuff happens all the time. And I should have just paid closer attention when I was lining up these boards for that tabletop to the grain direction and stuff. So now you can see it's a lot better, super flat. And after this thing's glued up, gonna get the C channel in that as quick as possible, definitely. All right, what do we have going on here? Looks like I'm just gonna wrestle these pieces. Yep, so this is my first time kind of like putting these two things together, and definitely in my head thinking like, okay, how on earth am I gonna do this? Haven't even shown you guys what the base of this table is gonna be. So I didn't even know how I was really gonna do this yet until I got to this point. But when I laid these things down my table saw, I seriously was like, I don't think I could have gotten it like physically out of my shop in one piece like this. So basically I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna use these Festool connectors, and my idea was to just leave it in two separate pieces and then bring the tabletop up there and then connect them together when I was up there at the shop doing delivery. The only problem is that also meant that I had to make it so that the base was able to be assembled and glued up there as well. And that's because this base is not a traditional base yet. So I know you guys haven't seen it yet. You're gonna see it, but I had to do something that turned out really, really cool for the base that I had never done before, and I loved how it came out. So I'll show you guys that as well. But these Festool connectors are pretty sweet. They're really strong. So my idea was just to put some of those in there, you know, get it together when I'm up there. And it really doesn't take long to do that. So this is my Make Happy jig. I love just like rounded, soft edges. Soft not as in like the top edge, but like just walking around a table, I like not bumping, you know, your hip on like a nice sharp edge or something like that. So I really like rounding out my corners of my tables. If people are cool with it, I like to do that. So this is me working on the base. Solid wood base to go with this massive tabletop. Just gluing all these pieces together. So it's basically like a slab style base, but there was no aprons or stretchers across this base at all. So, and to add on top of that, you probably saw from the thumbnail, there's something pretty crazy going on in the middle of the base. A lot of material got removed out of them. So that also is another weak point for these things. And whenever you're making a table, you want to really think about, is this thing gonna wobble? You know, is it gonna rock side to side, or can you, if you like stand on the end of the table and bump it, is it gonna move a ton? So you really want to think about that, and that's really what like aprons and stretchers do, and all those supporting elements in a table base. Those really make the table base nice and strong and sturdy without moving. But since this design didn't have anything like that, I had to figure out a way to make it so that these legs would be strong and the whole table just wouldn't like wobble back and forth. So you're gonna see my creative solution to that coming up in just a couple minutes here. Don't fast forward. So yep, just me sanding this thing. A lot of sanding on this. This table was too wide for my drum sander over there. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. It's a 50-inch drum sander and this thing wouldn't fit. So, but yeah, kind of just finishing up the bottom. I was able to use the drum sander on these legs, so that was nice. And so one thing that I was starting to get nervous about on these bases was, shoot, should I have made it so that the grain of the table bases was going sideways instead of vertically? And you're gonna see why also in just a minute. So just give me a second on that. Okay, so I'm working on the base for this table, and I'm just envisioning people watching this, and people are probably gonna comment on some things on this. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments, but I'm gonna explain some of my thinking right here really quick. So as you can see, these bases, the grain is going vertical kind of with the table. And obviously with that, since it's so wide and not very tall, there's a chance of these things cupping. But they're actually doing really good, especially with this drum sander. I'm able to get them really flat, so it's not really an issue. But someone in a smaller shop, it may be a little trickier to pull this off without these things cupping. So the other option would be to have these things go horizontal with the grain. So just picture that. Let me flip the camera around really quick. So as you guys can see from my hand sign language, I'm basically just thinking through, you can see on the side, there's an angle. So these are kind of like a tapered leg. And I was starting to get concerned actually with the strength of this leg and if I should have made it so that the grain was going horizontally, because what they wanted to do is they wanted to cut a flower out of the middle of this table. And yeah, I was getting really concerned that this thing would actually just snap in half because the flower was pretty big, and since the grain is going vertically, I was worried that like on the bottom, if you just like kicked it or something or bumped it, like those wood joins would just break apart. So I was starting to get a little bit worried about that, but I was kind of past the point of return, I guess. So I just had to keep going and basically just do it and then see if it was strong enough or not, and really hoping that it was. Okay, so the reason why I didn't do the grain horizontally, and it's really only for this reason, so you guys let me know if you think this is good thinking or not. With these bases, this is going to become a through tenon through the top of the table. So you're actually going to see the base from the top of the table. And the reason why I'm doing that is because there's no stretchers or middle supports on this table. So if you were to just put this base underneath the table and basically fasten it to the top, this thing would be super wobbly. And obviously that's not good. So if it's a through tenon, if this goes through the top of the table, I mean, that's like an 1 3/4 inches of strength, especially, I'm gonna put some wedges in there and it's gonna be glued in. So it's gonna be really strong and it won't wobble, theoretically, we'll see. So my thinking was that if this grain was horizontal, running this way, instead of running this way, when I do that through tenon, there would be potential for this thing to snap. And that's what I didn't want to happen. So I don't know if I was thinking about it too much or if I should have just gone for it that way. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think. Either way, I think this would have turned out. But that was my thinking for not having the grain be horizontal. I was worried about that tenon snapping, since that would be a weak point at that, where the shoulder meets the tenon. So when I get these things cut, I'll show you another visual of what I'm talking about, but you guys let me know in the comments. All right, so I'm at a pretty critical part right now. The sander's running, so I'm not inside. But I'm about to make a really important cut, and I'm just really nervous that it's gonna screw the whole thing up. Let me show you guys. So I took a piece of 1/2 inch MDF over to my friend's CNC, and we just had this flower, 5-petal flower cut out. And this is what's gonna get cut out of these table legs. This store that this table is going into, it's like a display table, massive display table with clothes on it and stuff, just different stuff that people can walk around and buy. And the store is called Bloom, so obviously flower bloom. They wanted a flower out of it. I thought it was a great idea. Although I wasn't sure how it was gonna look. You never really know. It looks great on paper until you start doing it. And sometimes it looks great and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm happy to say that this one, I think, turned out really good. People love it. I think it turned out great. I like it a lot. Not something I would have thought of or done though. So props to the customers on thinking of this one. And I think they watch my YouTube videos. So what's up, Lindsay and Alex? So as you can see, yeah, just cutting it out with a jigsaw, getting close to my lines as possible, because you really, I don't care how good of a flush trim router bit you have, you do not want to be cutting out much waste, especially with like on something like this where the grain direction is changing. That bit can run and grab the wood, so you want to get as close to that line as you can so that you're just doing super small passes and not taking off much meat. So putting the template back on there to trace it out basically with my router, just going slow, doing small passes. I do have a bigger router that would have been better to use, but it has just a bigger base and it's way heavier. So like especially on those corners, on those points when you're going around, it like wanted to tip and roll over. So I didn't want that to happen. So I just I think I chucked up like a brand new bit in this trim router, just went slow. And it worked out fine. So you don't need to go all the way down, just, you know, get a good start on it and then use that line you created to do the rest. And then if your bit's not long enough, or, you know, if it's in a trim router like this, I wouldn't do it all the way through anyway. Flip it over, put a bottom bearing bit on it, and then run it back around, and that'll clean everything up and you have your shape. So obviously I had to do 2 of these. It did take a while just to make sure that yeah, it came out nice and clean and everything. And another reason why you want to go nice and slow if you can, not too slow, but you kind of want to like mess with your bit speeds to make sure that you don't get too much burning. It's kind of unavoidable. You're gonna get some burning in some areas, but you don't want like the whole thing to be like black and burnt. You can see one point in there. Or is that no, that's the sawhorses. But you can see some black spots in there. And you're not gonna want to sand those out. You will spend all day trying to sand out burn marks on end grain, especially on like white oak. So get yourself some card scrapers. I don't know if I showed this, but get some card scrapers and scrape it off. And it basically it's like scraping burnt toast off, you know, with a knife. You just scrape it off instead of trying to sand it out. Okay, so this is where things get crazy. Did I really not film? Okay, so I basically just made, I did. So I made a tenon on these bases, okay? So just super easy, again, with the track saw. I just ran a line with my track saw, took the meat out, did the rest with a router, and now I'm cutting a shoulder on this tenon, and that shoulder is gonna conceal, you know, and help the end of that table base sit up against the table nice and cleanly. And this is where it's a really good thing that I made the grain on these table bases go vertically, because with this tenon, if the grain was horizontal, it would just snap off, because there's a weak point where the tenon meets that table base. So if the grain's going horizontal, you know, it can just snap off, but since it's vertical, there's pretty much no way. It's super strong. There's no way that could snap. And that was the reason why I did it vertically, although I was worried about the base not being strong with the flour, with the vertical grain. So just kind of had to test it out, but I think this was the call in the end. So I got the tenons in the bases. I have some wedges, and I'm basically doing a wedge tenon through this entire tabletop. And keep in mind, this tabletop is not glued up yet. So I put the table base, the leg, on the tabletop and just traced it out with a marking knife. And now same thing, I put the 2 tabletops together, got to hog out all this material, starting with the jigsaw, This probably, I'm gonna guess this probably doesn't last long, and I probably switched to the track saw. Let's see. Do I switch to the track saw? What do you guys think? I think I probably do. I don't remember. You guys think I like know everything that's about to happen in these videos? Nope. I put them together and I just watch and narrate as I go. Oh yeah, okay, so I did the jigsaw just to get around the corners super clean, you know, just working around the corners and everything. Pretty good technique, but there's no way I use the jigsaw for the rest. Yeah, see, told you guys. Track saw for the win. So switching back to the track saw to get the rest of that material out. Good call, man. What a smart guy. Okay, so getting these tenons rough cut, and if you look closely, you know, I didn't take away the line. I really wanted these things to be tight because remember, there's no aprons or stretchers on this table, so the strength of this tenon right here is pretty much the strength of the entire table base. So it looks like I made a template. I don't remember doing that. So it looks like I made a template out of some plywood, which is a really good idea. I mean, anytime you can make a template instead of just like using a chisel up to a line or something, it's always going to be so much better. And using a route, for me, in my opinion, I'm so much better with tracing a template, imagine that, than using a chisel. So here you can see it's pretty much all the way cut out. And you see how the corners, when you use a router, are rounded on that tenon, but my tenon wasn't rounded, it was sharp. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to round out the tenon on the corners, on those corners, so that it goes down into that rounded tenon, but that's really no big deal. I would pretty much always rather round out a tenon than square out a mortise, and that's just me. And if you're in England or something and you want to say mortise, that's fine, but it's a mortise. So I rounded out the tenons, and here's just my rough fit after slamming this thing down in there. You can see there's some gaps on that one side. Oh, it wasn't seated all the way though either. So, okay. And then, so since I said it's going to be a wedge tenon, you want to drill a relief hole in the bottom of the tenon so that that wood can actually move. Because if you just cut a line with that saw down in there, it's not enough for that wood to really split and move. So cut a relief hole, and that makes it so it can move more. Then when you drive the wedge down in there, it's gonna get even tighter. So that's what I was doing there. And then I'm just doing some finishing touches on the bases before, final. And nerve-wracking here, because I brought this thing up to the site where it's going, and I hadn't even assembled this table yet. So luckily there was nobody around, and I got to just sweat it out alone. If you're wondering, dude, there's no way, you had to have had help carrying this thing in. I did not. I had no help carrying this in. So I don't even know how. I think my back was hurting for the next couple of days. Okay, so I'm gonna apologize to everyone. I could not take a video of me gluing this thing up on site. Just too much going on here. It was not stressful until... Okay, so what I did was I laid down some brown paper. And I was assembling this thing upside down because I basically did a dry run at my house, at my shop, practicing, and everything went great. Of course, we all know how the story goes. But what happened was some of the brown paper got caught in the middle of the joint and it wasn't coming together. And so I basically decided to flip this thing over, which was an absolute nightmare. I got it on its feet, and that's when I realized that there was some paper caught down this middle joint here. So then I had to throw some wedges in the bottom of it to open the joint back up. I tried to pull out as much of the paper as I could, put some more glue in there, squeezed it back together, and that's where we are now. Everything's pretty much together. It was just one of those things. It's like, I can't believe that just happened. So, but it's looking pretty good. Let me flip it around. So, like I was saying, not everything goes as planned in woodworking. I felt like such an idiot for this, seriously, because they had just polished their concrete. And if you've never used Type on 3 before, is it just Type on 3? Someone let me know. But I definitely know that Type on 3, like if it goes on concrete, it will take up everything else with it. So even on polished concrete, if you like put Type on 3 down and then scrape it off, there's no polish where the glue was. So if there was like glue drip lines along this nice polished concrete, I would have been so bummed because their concrete would have looked so bad. So that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to eliminate drip lines, which good on me. And then the paper got caught in between the join, and seriously, I was pretty stressing on that. But like I explained, I was able to pull it back apart quickly, throw in some more glue, scrape out like 90% of the paper that was in there. And I just, we talked about not forcing things together earlier. I forced this thing together, and honestly, it came out like so much better than I thought it was going to in that moment, because of the paper in there. So so glad that worked out. And yeah, just did all my final sanding here in the shop with the vacuum. There's really like no dust that flies around, which is awesome. And then obviously I had to do the whole finishing process here too. What I will do with a Rubio finish is I like to do, I think it was like cotton white, but I mix the cotton white and pure together so it's not such a strong whitewash. I do a coat of that, and then my second coat that goes on top of the colored coat, I just do pure. And I think it gives it like a much more subtle stain look. So this is just after the cotton white, and I haven't even fully buffed it in yet. And this thing was so big, obviously it takes a while to buff in and buff out. So yeah, I was definitely in the shop. This was a late night here, but got this thing done. Woo, we did it. My hand is shaking because it took a while to buff this whole thing off, but we did it. And I'm tired. It's kind of late. It's getting late. I'm here at night trying to finish this thing up. But I just wanted to thank you guys for watching. If you're bummed that you didn't get to see as much of the process as you wanted to, you must be new to this channel. This is not a good how-to woodworking channel. This channel is, we don't really know yet. We're figuring it out. So if you liked it, smash that like button for me. Let me know what you thought. You don't have to smash the like button. You can just gently tap it too if you want to. So I'll give you guys some final beauty shots of this thing. We'll get out of here. See you on the next one, if there is one. There should be. I know, that's why you guys are here. So relieved after doing a job like this. Have you guys ever done a job made a table this big? Let me know. What do you guys think about that through tenon after sanding with the wedges? What do you guys think about that? Seriously perspirating here. Well, you guys, if you've made it this far, I want to applaud you. I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. Did you like the video? Let me know if you like me watching it with you. Is it distracting? Is it more entertaining? Please let me know. I'm totally open to whatever. if you guys have made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. Trying to get to 1,000 subs to start. That's my goal. So I can hopefully get some monetization action going on. So that would be awesome. Do all the things, like it, comment on this. It all helps. So I appreciate you guys. If you were new here and this is your first time, thanks for hanging out. Hope to see you guys again on the next one. And got a couple more fun ones in the works. So, yep.